Hakainde Hichilema.
We gave Hichilema number 5 on the Telegraph's World Leaders competition recently. Here's our interview with Ben to find out why. Ben, welcome to Battleland's Global Health Security. You interviewed Hakainde Hichilema recently in Zambia. Just give us a bit of background. Who is this guy? And tell us a bit about Zambia.
Yeah, so Zambia is a landlocked country in southern Africa. It's got about 22 million people, and it's about twice the size of Germany. President Hichilema was elected 4 years ago. He is the president, and I went to interview him at his house outside the capital as part of the Telegraph World Leaders series.
And why was he shortlisted? What were the sort of criteria? What were the factors that went into that?
He had attracted the attention of the Telegraph judges because of his performance really on the economy and what he's done in Zambia, restructuring the debt and reforming the economy, cracking down on corruption, and hopefully huge knock-on effect that will have on the people and their life in the country.
Let's hear a clip from your interview.
We were elected on a ticket of reforms, headlined by the economic reforms to address the decline in the economy that we were experiencing in the previous government's 10-year aid. One of the things that was standing in our way of our economic reforms was the debt mountain. As you know, we defaulted 2020, and we then inherited a country which was basically a basket case, failed to meet its obligations. I don't know to explain it. So in our drive to bottom up the economy, which was then running at minus 2.8% GDP growth, we had to tackle that. And in our manifesto to the voters, we highlighted debt restructure as one of our key objectives, to create space, to create the headroom for the growth agenda that we set ourselves upon. And we called it actually a mission impossible. We defined it as a python wrapped around our necks, couldn't breathe properly, around our chest, ribs, and the legs. So that is why we set out to do what we did.
So Hichilema renegotiated what he describes as a debt mountain in Zambia. Perhaps looking to some of the country's neighbours, why was this such an important move?
Yeah, so when he came to power, Zambia was in terrible trouble. He himself describes it as a basket case, and it was the first country in Africa to default on its debts during the COVID pandemic. It couldn't pay its debts, basically. Now, what is so important in Africa at the moment is there are other countries who are also in a great difficulty. The continent is to some extent facing a debt crisis. The Vatican conducted a study last year. They hired a Nobel-winning economist, and he said that Africa is in its worst debt squeeze in decades. So what Hichilema has done could be an example for other African countries.
So how does that debt squeeze trickle down and affect African health?
Well, as he described it, it sort of it affects everything that he was trying to do. Whenever he was trying to do development or spend more on health or more on education, the obstacle he was coming up against was he had these huge interest repayments, and that was the top of his agenda. And that just really diverted money from other things, other priorities. So if he wanted to spend money on hospitals, if he wanted to spend money on education, his problem was that his first priority is he has to spend money on these huge debt repayments. And sort of revamping that and cutting those debt repayments has given him a lot of headroom, a lot of breathing space for other priorities.
And could you see that on the ground when you were there in Zambia? What kind of things were people telling you about how their life has changed over the past few years?
It's important to say that it's not plain sailing yet. So he is making the right moves and he is going in the right direction. But there is still a big cost of living crisis, and people are still, the jury is still out about how popular he is after this. But, having said that, he has managed to hire tens of thousands of teachers. He's reduced or got rid of fees on primary and secondary education, which could potentially have a huge effect on development in Zambia. Because the debt is starting